last expedition. Captain Samantha Green was the leader of the first human mission to explore the distant planet of Exelon. The planet was known to have a hostile environment and strange, unknown creatures roaming its surface. Despite the risks, the crew was determined to uncover the secrets of this mysterious world. The journey to Exelon was a risk, but it was a risk worth taking. The scientific community was buzzing with excitement about the possibilities of discovering new life on this distant planet. And Samantha Green, with her brilliant mind and fearless spirit, was the perfect candidate to lead the mission. As the Star Voyager approached Exelon, the crew prepared for their descent. They had trained for months for this moment and were confident in their abilities. But as soon as they entered Exelon's atmosphere, everything changed. As the spaceship descended into Exelon's atmosphere, the crew was immediately struck by its strange beauty. Despite its ominous appearance, the planet was alive with strange glowing creatures that seemed to be attracted to the ship's lights. The crew quickly realized that they were not alone on the planet and that they were in grave danger. Mobility was nearly impossible, and communication with the base on Earth was lost. Suddenly, the ship was thrown into chaos as a strange, glowing creature attached itself to the hull, causing the engines to fail. Samantha and her team were forced to abandon the ship and seek shelter on the surface of the planet. The planet was crawling with creatures that were unlike anything they had ever seen. They had razor-sharp claws and glowing eyes that seemed to be able to see right through you. Horrifying creatures roamed the planet's dark forests, hunting for their next meal. Samantha and her team faced many challenges as they struggled to survive on the hostile planet of Exelon. Despite their best efforts, they were no match for the strange and terrifying creatures that roamed the planet's surface. The crew fought valiantly to protect one another, but one by one, they were taken by the creatures. On her way back to the ship, she encountered the source of the glowing creatures. It was a massive, humanoid entity that seemed to be the ruler of Exelon. It towered over her, its eyes shining bright like stars. At first, she was filled with fear, but then she realized that the entity was communicating with her telepathically. It revealed to her that the planet was once inhabited by an advanced civilization, but they had been destroyed by their own creations, the glowing creatures. The entity was the only survivor, and it had been watching and waiting for someone to come to the planet. Samantha was amazed by the entity's knowledge and power, but she was also aware of the danger she was in. She knew that she had to make a deal with the entity if she wanted to survive. She realized that the entity was the only hope of escaping the planet alive. Samantha made a deal with the entity, promising to leave the planet and never return in exchange for her life. The entity agreed, and Samantha was able to escape Exelon. As Samantha made her way back to Earth, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. She was tormented by nightmares of the glowing creatures and the entity she had encountered on Exelon. Days after her return, strange things began to happen. She would hear strange whispers in the dead of night and see ghostly apparitions of her fallen crew members. It was as if they were trying to warn her of something. One night, while alone in her home, Samantha was suddenly transported back to Exelon. The entity had broken its promise and taken her back to the planet. It revealed that it had been using her as a vessel to bring more humans to the planet, to feed its minions. Samantha was horrified and realized that the entity had never intended to let her leave the planet. She was trapped, and the only way to escape was to find a way to defeat the entity and its minions. She battled her way through the glowing creatures, using all her training and wit to survive. And finally, she reached the entity's lair. Samantha was stunned, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. And he was the entity, but it had transformed into the form of a child. The entity spoke to her telepathically, revealing that it had been watching her since her return from Exelon and had grown fascinated with her. It explained that it had the ability to take on any form it desired, and it had chosen to appear as a child to try and understand the humans it had come to hunt. It offered to spare her life in exchange for her help in locating other humans to feed its minions. Samantha was horrified, and she knew that she had to fight the entity once again. She prepared for battle, but the entity surprised her by transforming into a massive, terrifying monster. In a final showdown, she used a weapon from her spaceship to destroy the entity and free herself its grasp, but as she made her way back to her spaceship, she realized that the entity was not dead. It was still alive, and it had taken control of her dead crew members. They were now its minions, hunting for their next meal. Samantha was forced to make a difficult decision. She activated the self-destruct sequence on the spaceship, destroying it and all the creatures on Exelon. After activating the self-destruct sequence and sacrificing herself to destroy the entity, Samantha was transported back to Earth. She appeared in the middle of a bustling city, surrounded by people who were completely unaware of her sudden appearance. At first, she was stunned and disoriented, unable to understand how she had made it back to Earth. She looked down at herself, relieved to see that she was still in one piece and unharmed. She walked down the streets, marveling at the familiar sights and sounds of her home planet. The skyscrapers and the bustling crowds of people seemed like a distant memory, and she was grateful to be back among her own kind. As she made her way through the city, she noticed that people were starting to look at her strangely. They seemed frightened by her appearance, and she couldn't understand why. She felt as though she were being watched, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. Despite her growing unease, Samantha pushed on, determined to reach the safety of her home. But as she walked, strange things began to happen. She heard whispers in the dead of night, and ghostly apparitions of her fallen crew members appeared before her. It was as if they were trying to warn her of something. It wasn't until she was safely back in her home that she realized the truth. The entity had placed a piece of itself within her, and it was still alive. It had used her as a vessel to transport itself back to Earth, and now it was waiting for the next opportunity to feed on the lives of humans. Samantha was horrified. She had sacrificed herself to destroy the entity, only to bring it back to Earth with her. And now, she was doomed to be its host, dooming all who crossed her path to a horrifying fate.